In this episode, I talk about the power that exists in seeing others as mirrors to our inner world so that we can break out of the pattern and not get stuck blaming others, which ultimately just leads us to avoiding our own inner work. I share personal accounts of related things I've experienced and also how I've healed them. Hi, and welcome to Heal into Balance with Jammie Kohen. My name is Jammie Kohen. I'm a holistic consultant based in Visalia, California, and I specialize in the Aboriginal Dreamtime Healing using Holographic Kinetics. It's a powerful healing modality, unlike anything else, that allows me to facilitate communication with the person's spirit so that the person can find the root cause of their issues, whether they were created in this life, past lives, or pass down the genetic lines so that they can make changes in order to make their lives better. In this reality, it can be so easy to look to other people for our problems and blame the outside world and others for everything going wrong in our lives. What I had to realize eventually was that I was the common denominator in all of my relationships. And if I was attracting the same kind of people or the same kind of situations, then chances are there was something going on with me. And, that was the beginning of completely flipping that script. Instead of looking at it as if, why do I keep getting with these same kind of guys? Or why do my relationships keep ending the same kind of way where they end up being one-sided, or I'm giving more than the other person, or getting with people who are, quote, emotionally unavailable, right? It can be really easy to look towards the outside and think that all of those other people are the problem, when really we are the common denominators. So where in your life are you placing blame on other people? Because that's exactly where you need to go within. The way I figure out how the issues that I need to take to a holographic kinetic session is I literally look for the patterns going on in my life that I'm not enjoying. So for instance, when I started noticing that I was attracting the same kind of men or the same kind of relationships where it was just one-sided, there was just not much emotional depth, it was pretty shallow in the connection itself, and I was constantly finding myself just giving and giving while the other person would just, close off more or only be interested once I pulled back. When I began to peel off those layers and look at those things in session as issues versus looking to need to change the partner or the people outside of me, everything started changing. And as I peeled off those layers, I just started really getting a stronger sense of self, and I attracted an amazing partner into my life. So pay attention to where you're blaming the outside world for things going on in your life. I know that we're really taught to blame whole groups of people sometimes, whole countries, right? And the reality is that everything is an inside job. So if there's something that you're not enjoying in your life, or you're not attracting the kind of partners that you think that you want at this point in your life, then that's a really good place to start. I've had several clients come to me and work through key patterns that they were noticing in relationship, where they were attracting a certain kind of dynamic, or they were attracting a certain kind of person into their life over and over. And maybe you can relate to this, where the meat suit changes, but it's as if you're dating the same person, or you keep attracting the same person. And the clients that I'm speaking of were doing that, okay? They brought those issues to a session. They looked at those dynamics. They looked at the patterns showing up in the kind of people that they were attracting, and things flipped. So the one person actually, the next day after their session, They went on a date with someone who they're still with, as far as I know. They're actually, the last I knew, they'd been with this person for, I think, over a year and had been living with them and felt like they were going to be the person that they wanted to marry. The other person I'm thinking of, she actually ended up starting to date a really great guy, and she specifically told me that he was unlike anyone else that she had ever dated. So it can be real easy to think that other people are our problems, especially when we keep just attracting the same kind of people. You could even, you hear in people saying things like, oh, women are all the same, or men are all the same, or, men this or women that, and they're just generalizing based on their own personal experience, like a whole group of people, right? That's exactly when we need to go within. And those are the kinds of things that you can heal with holographic kinetics. And everything seems so external in this reality, but everyone around us is just literally mirroring back to us the things that we need to look at so that we can move past our own limitations and thrive. So, it happens so much of the time too that even with friends of mine, we'll be talking about things that we're dealing with, and we'll be dealing with the same things. Like attracts like. We're all showing each other where our hangups are, what we need to heal. And if you start paying attention, and instead of feeling like attacked by the outside world, if you just start getting curious and you become more of an observer to what's going on, you start realizing that, oh, there's these patterns happening in my life with other people. And I'm not enjoying that. So those are the kinds of things that I take to a session, because our spirits are just over living the same experiences on repeat. They want to move forward. We came here to fully experience this life, and it's really hard to do that when we're caught up on the same repeating patterns, because we have limiting thoughts and beliefs locked in at the spirit level that we're carrying through. And it's like we're literally getting shown those things all of the time. We just have to start paying attention and stop living in this victimhood mentality. And this is another good thing to look at. I had to look at that at one point, and even had my son point it out to me. And, I'm sure you're aware at this point that the people closest to you are typically the ones that trigger you the most. And I think that's by design. And also, when we're close to people, we sort of let our guard down, and a lot of our issues will be, will come out more when we're around somebody all the time. So I actually had my son tell me at one point, like, Mom, you act like a victim. Like, you always think I'm attacking you. And it was like, oh, crap. It's like, I just thought to myself, like, this might be something I need to look at. And, as a human, I just went about living my life, and then it's like you get triggered again, and then you're reminded of that. But at one point, I actually asked my spirit, because I had other things going on in my life, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, I want clarity around what's going on right now in my life. And it literally pointed me to information about victimhood mentality, and completely, hadn't really thought about it in terms of what my son had said, but got pointed to this information, and I started looking it up, and it's like, oh, what's involved in victimhood mentality? Like, what does somebody with that mentality, have going on in their lives? And it was just like reading, I was like, oh, yeah, I noticed that with myself. Oh, I noticed this with myself. Oh, I noticed that with myself. And not to say that I haven't been through a lot in my life, right? But there comes a point where we have to start realizing that if we're feeling attacked by life or attacked by other people, it's not life or other people that's the issue. It's things that we have locked in internally at the spirit level that we need to then look at and deal with. So I ended up taking that issue to a session of holographic kinetics and clearing that completely flipped my relationship with my son. We get along so much better, and I'm not triggered by him anymore. I don't feel like it's like I've noticed that he still will joke with me in the same ways, but I don't take it personally anymore. So if you have that going on too, I urge you, because I can't recommend it highly enough, that you have a session of holographic kinetics around that issue. Because for me, thinking that I was getting attacked by other people and then some other things about my own intelligence that I'd locked in at that time kept making me feel like people were being condescending to me as well. And clearing those thoughts and beliefs flipped that as well. Like, I no longer take things so personally, and I don't look at things as being condescending. It's just like, I get that my son is just joking now, versus before where I would just like take everything personally. I would feel very much on the defensive, and it was really blocking us from being able to have a good connection, because it was just like I just felt constantly attacked. And if you live with a teenager, if you're walking around feeling constantly attacked, it's like it's no way to live, because teenagers are gonna just be themselves as they should be, but they're gonna like joke and they're gonna like pick at us. And walking around with that mentality and just feeling constantly bombarded was really harming my relationship with my son. So I say this all really to just point out the fact that if you're continually having the same kinds of patterns show up in your life, in relationship, and you keep noticing that you're attracting the same kind of situations and people into your life, start getting curious instead of being so defensive with it. Start getting curious instead of wanting to label the other people as narcissists or whatever terms, that we'll use to sort of describe our experiences. Pay attention, because chances are there's something within you that needs balanced out, and it has nothing to do with the other person ultimately. The other people are just showing us what we need to look at so that we can move forward without all of the limiting beliefs and thoughts as we move towards this new way of being in our lives. If you want to attract better, you've got to heal your stuff. If you want to have better relationships in your life, you've got to heal your stuff and go within. There's no getting around that. Until you do the inner work, you're going to just keep seeing the same people in different bodies show up in your reality. You're going to keep having the same dynamics, and you're going to if you keep blaming the outside, you're just going to completely overlook your work, your part in it that you need to do. And while I'm on this, I think a lot of us have things coming up right now. And instead of feeling like there's something wrong with life, if you would just get curious and go within, I'm telling you, the pain that comes by going within and actually doing the inner work is far less than any pain that you're covering up constantly with drugs or alcohol to numb that. And the avoidance doesn't actually get you anywhere except for dis-ease and feeling depressed and anxious all the time, because you're constantly pushing your stuff down without actually dealing with it. Numbing with drugs and alcohol doesn't really get you anywhere ultimately. It just keeps you stuck, and it actually opens you up to other things that can then come in and really detrimentally affect you and your life. Something I find interesting that was happening in my life as I was dating was that I kept finding emotionally unavailable men, okay? So they were just unwilling to go deeper with me. And what I realized was as I was dating one of them, I started doing a lot of introspection, and I began to become aware of this whole notion of people being mirrors for us and people reflecting back to us our own issues. And so as I was realizing that, I realized this person seemed emotionally unavailable, I then had to turn it around on myself. And I'm like, oh, if they're emotionally unavailable, maybe I'm emotionally unavailable. And when I flipped it and turned that observation to myself, it was very eye-opening. And I started to realize how closed off I was. And that's when shit got real in my healing journey, because when you notice this happening, you can no longer just chalk it up to that person being a bad fit for you, or not having their stuff together, or having some flaw of their own. It's like you have to start realizing, like, oh, what's going on with me? And I came to realize then, after dating a few people who were emotionally unavailable, I just started peeling layers off based on what I was seeing show up. So taking issues to sessions that were related to things like, always giving and ending up with people who weren't giving back, not reciprocating, and being emotionally unavailable and having that show up in dynamics with other people, and really started looking at where these relationships felt that they were lacking, and taking those as issues to holographic kinetic sessions. And as I peeled off those layers, I actually ended up then finding myself at a repeat training course for holographic kinetics, and I peeled even more things off, and it ended up opening my heart. So through clearing all of those limitations that I was seeing through the repeating dynamics and patterns in my relationships, I actually peeled off layers to then open my heart. And when you realize, like, oh, I've been in relationships with this closed heart that had come from many past lifetimes ago, where I had something really traumatic happen, I realized, like, how are you actually going to love anyone from that closed off heart space? You're not. So it means that, I was lacking in love towards myself, and I was lacking in being able to even feel love for other people, because I was so closed off, which had happened as a protective mechanism. And I think a lot of us are unknowingly walking around with closed hearts and then wondering why we're not finding fulfilling relationships. And so this is part of why it's so important to actually start unraveling your own inner workings, your own inner patterns, and becoming more of an observer to your life versus getting so caught up in it emotionally. You know how it's really easy to see the patterns and issues going on with people that you care about? You can look into their relationships and you can point out all these things that you see that are happening, or that are, quote, wrong, or, where this friend or loved one is allowing, other people to treat them certain ways. But when you're actually in your own relationships and you're living your own life, you're so emotionally invested and so emotionally involved that usually you can't even see your own stuff. Clearly, you can't see your own patterns. And it's just about the fact we have blind spots because of the nature of this experience. Everything feels so real, and it feels so raw at times. And we're so just in it and experiencing it and getting triggered and having things happen and just, sometimes getting overwhelmed with life and feeling bombarded and just feeling a little lost when our relationships keep panning out the same way. It's like, we don't know what to do with that. And we don't always see it so clearly because we always have these blind spots to our experience that come with just being really wrapped up in it. So when you become more of an observer to your life, you remove that emotional charge somewhat, or at least enough so that you can see more clearly what's going on, so that you can start actually realizing the repeating things that are happening versus just pointing fingers and blaming other people. Even for me, I have been controlled in a relationship before to the point where when I got out of it, I didn't even know simple things about myself or what I liked because so many things within the house were controlled by the other person. And the interesting thing is that I've been taken back to past lives through issues that I've taken to holographic kinetic sessions, and things have come out about me being really controlling, like in a past life, one in particular I'm thinking of. And, that's one thing too, is that there are things that we're balancing out through our experiences in this life that we aren't always aware of. And in fact, most of the time we aren't aware because we're carrying these things through our spirit, at the spirit level. And so we don't have conscious memory of where these issues are stemming from or what we have to look at and balance out in this life. So even just judging our experiences as good or bad, that is not accurate because we never know what we're experiencing because of things that we've done in the past. And, if I was controlling to people in the past, and as my teacher, Steve Richards, says, you can't escape time. You can't escape your own creation. We always have to experience our own creations. So if that's the case, wouldn't it make sense then that in this life, other people would be controlling me? Because there has to be a balance. So even labeling people in your relationships as this or that, having this problem, that problem, being this kind of person or this kind of person, and naming them based on their behavior in this life, it's really not the full picture. And the more I started realizing that for myself, the more free I became. Because when you give other people all the power and you think that they're the ones orchestrating all of your misery, it's really disempowering. It really is. Even if you think that it makes you feel better to place blame on somebody else versus taking full responsibility for what's showing up in your life, ultimately it's disempowering because you're literally giving power away to other people to either make you happy or make you miserable. And when you realize that you're the one with the power to make yourself happy and that you're the one creating situations that are making you miserable, even if it's something where you're carrying these things unknowingly, isn't it time to get curious? It's 2023. We're all being pushed beyond our comfort zones to look at our own stuff. And if you're struggling right now and these things keep feeling bombarding, it'd be a really good time to go within and just get more curious about, well, why does this always happen in my life? Why am I attracting this kind of relationship? Why am I noticing this pattern within myself all the time? Why am I having this recurring thought constantly about myself or about life? Get curious and seek true healing. Everything can be changed in this reality. And when you realize that and you start unraveling your own patterns, you just really tap into your own power as a spiritual being having this human experience. Your spirit can change anything. You just have to start taking the blame away from other people and accept full responsibility for where you are in your life. And this isn't to make people who are in abusive situations feel as though it's their fault, but there is a reason why you've attracted that into your life. What about you attracted that and created that? For me, for instance, as someone who's been with a narcissist in the past, or someone that you could label that way, as someone who's been with somebody who was really controlling, I could easily get caught up in that and think that it's all just the other person is just like this bad person, right? But instead of doing that, I had to go within and I looked at, well, how did that even start? And it started because I gave my power away. I had dated someone prior who basically didn't make many of the decisions. I would often take kind of the lead and I would make decisions about life. I'd even make basic decisions about what hikes we would do, what we would do on the weekends or on our days off. And I was tired of it. Like, I wanted a break. I literally just remember like wanting to be with somebody who would actually plan things and make the decisions for a change. And I found that person and they were more than happy to decide where we would go hiking, decide what we would do on our days off. And from there, just took more and more and more of the power as I just gave it to them. Now, obviously, when I got into that situation, I wasn't thinking of it in an unhealthy way. I was just tired of being the one to always make decisions in my relationship. And so that's it. I just wanted somebody who would like take the reins and make plans for us, and I could just go along with it and enjoy it without always having to be the one thinking things through, figuring things out, making the plans, looking up places to go. And, for a while that worked and it felt like a relief. But looking back from where I'm at now, I realized how much of my power I just completely gave over to that person. And I had to just get real with myself. There was no one to blame but me. We don't have to give our power away like that, right? We don't have to let somebody else make all the decisions in our lives. And in fact, if we're feeling the need to do that, maybe there's some other imbalance that we'd be better off looking at internally versus even seeking a relationship at that point, right? So I think you probably get what I'm saying, and I don't want to repeat myself, but just really start looking at the people that cross your path as being mirrors for you. And I find that where I'm really judging others, I have something similar going on within me that I'm denying or I'm not accepting about myself. So start getting curious, start being more of an observer, and start really looking at your life and things and situations in your life, people in your life, more without that emotional charge as best that you can. And get curious about why things are the way they are and why you do what you do and why you attract what you attract. Because until you heal, and I learned this from my own experience, you will keep attracting the same people over and over and over. They'll look different. They might drive different cars. They might, you'll just keep attracting the same person over and over, just in a different body, in a different meat suit. And if you're tired of doing that, start healing, start going within. It's the only way to get past those repeating patterns in relationships. We're typically taught that the only way to really heal and deal with our issues is to go to years and years of talk therapy or to take medications. How many times have you gone to your doctor talking about issues that you're having in relationship? You're having anxiety, you're having depression, you're fighting a lot with your spouse, you feel overwhelmed with life, and they whip out a prescription pad and start telling you that there's some medication that could help with that. It's happened to me multiple times in the course of my life when really they didn't even get curious and ask me questions about why I was feeling the way I was feeling. So if you find yourself in this place and you are just sick and tired of seeing the same relationship show up in your life, the same people, the same situations, the same repeating patterns happen over and over and over, know that you're not listening to this on accident. There is something that can help you. This is why I'm so passionate about the work I do with Dreamtime Healing using holographic kinetics. I don't speak of these things as a ploy to get more business. I speak of these things because it actually has worked to help me shift so many things in my life and start attracting better and different kinds of situations and people into my reality. I've seen it help so many people at this point that I've worked with, especially in areas of relationships, be it with some intimate partner or, the people they were attracting when they were dating, not really being what they ultimately wanted in a partner, or the relationships with their children and other family members. We can shift these things, and you would be surprised at how much can be changed when you go to one holographic kinetic session. By peeling off these layers bit by bit, I've been able to completely attract a conscious partnership that's with a man who is amazing, and he's unlike anyone else that I have attracted in the past because he's actually going within and doing all the inner work himself. He was already healing before we even met. People like this exist, right? People who are looking at their stuff exist. And if you're attracting people who aren't doing the inner work and you are, there's just more to look at. Making change and healing and doing the inner work doesn't have to be a lifelong endeavor where we feel like we're never getting anywhere. There are so many people that I see in the world who are just accepting their issues as part of themselves, as something that can't be changed, as something incurable, unchangeable, and that's just not the case. While I can't make claims that holographic kinetics can cure or heal anything because of the nature of this reality and the way that it's set up, I can say that so many shifts can happen from just one session. But just know that if you've got a mountain of traumas that have happened to you in your life and you have a lot of things that you're struggling with, you need to really expect to have at least 3 sessions in order to sort of dig yourself out of all of that, because you can't change everything in your life in one session. But we can do a lot to change individual issues with one session. It doesn't take you coming back week after week after week, looking at the same thing over and over and rehashing it and talking about it over and over. You could literally bring it to a session. You and your spirit make changes, and then you move on from that issue. Our healing isn't limited to talk therapy and medications, even though those are the things that your doctor is going to recommend. There are a ton of other healing options for you that are holistic, that don't come with side effects. And for me, I'm passionate about holographic kinetics because of all of the different alternative holistic therapies that I've tried. It has been the one that has helped me heal and shift the most in the fastest amount of time. So if you're tired of doing the same old things that aren't working for you, realize they're not working for you, and seek something different and new, because it could be the thing that can shift your entire reality. Today's message is go within, start looking at yourself versus pointing fingers to the outside. Other people aren't to blame for your unhappiness. Ultimately, it's your own limiting beliefs that are being shown to you through everyone that you meet. When you become an observer and you go within and you start healing these things at the root cause, you can completely shift your life and attract better relationships, stronger connections that already exist with people in your life. And that's where we move forward. That's where we start thriving versus surviving. If you find yourself wanting to learn more about the work I do with Dreamtime Healing using Holographic Kinetics, or you want to book a session with me, head over to my website at healintobalance.com. Please stay tuned. Every Monday, I'll be uploading new episodes of this podcast, so subscribe and share it with anyone that you think would resonate with this message. I appreciate you being here. Thank you for listening.